why Tigers were the most feared tanks in World War II, and why did Germany develop new heavy tanks in the first place? The appearance of heavily armored Allied tanks like the Soviet T-34 and KV-1 outmatched existing German armor, but how did Germany respond to this challenge? They initiated the development of the Tiger I to counter these superior Soviet designs. However, what was the outcome of this development? The Tiger I entered service in 1942, providing Germany with a formidable heavy tank. Yet, why was there a need for a successor to the Tiger I? The evolving battlefield and advancements in Allied armor necessitated an even more powerful tank. So, what was Germany's solution? They developed the Tiger II, also known as the King Tiger, which featured enhanced armor and firepower. But how did these tanks impact German armored strategy? The Tigers became central to Germany's efforts to regain armored superiority during the war. However, what challenges did they face in production? The complexity and resource demands of these tanks limited their production numbers. So, what was the ultimate effect of these limitations? Despite their battlefield prowess, the limited numbers of Tiger tanks constrained their overall impact on the war's outcome. But what made the 88mm gun such a formidable weapon in World War II? Originally designed as an anti-aircraft gun, its high velocity and ability to pierce thick armor made it perfect for use in the Tiger tanks. But how did this adaptation impact its performance against enemy tanks? The gun's ability to fire high-velocity rounds allowed it to engage Allied tanks at significantly greater ranges, often before they could retaliate. However, how did this compare to the armament of other tanks at the time? The 88mm gun far outclassed most other tank guns, including those on the Soviet T-34 and American Sherman, in terms of both range and penetration. Yet, how did this heavy firepower affect the tactics of both the German and Allied forces? Allied forces quickly realized they had to avoid direct engagements with Tigers, often relying on ambush tactics or air support to neutralize them. Then how did the psychological effect of the 88mm gun impact morale on both sides? The sheer reputation of the Tiger's firepower demoralized Allied troops, who were often forced to retreat or alter their strategies when encountering these tanks. However, what about the German crews operating these guns? While the firepower was awe-inspiring, the limited number of Tigers in service meant that crews faced constant pressure to maximize their tanks' effectiveness on the battlefield. So, how did the Allies attempt to counter this overwhelming firepower? They developed more advanced anti-tank weapons and began focusing on coordination between infantry, armor, and air support to neutralize the Tigers. Yet despite these efforts, what lasting impact did the Tiger's firepower have on tank warfare? The Tiger's 88mm gun forced a rethinking of tank and anti-tank designs, influencing tank tactics for decades after the war. What made the armor of the Tiger tanks so remarkable? The Tiger tanks were equipped with incredibly thick armor, with the front plate reaching up to 100mm, offering exceptional protection. But how did this thickness compare to other tanks at the time? The Tiger's armor was considerably thicker than most other tanks, such as the Soviet T-34, which had much thinner plates, making it far more resistant to enemy fire. However, why did the designers choose to focus on thickness rather than using sloped armor? German engineers opted for vertical armor, believing that thick plates would provide better protection against the high-velocity rounds they expected from Allied tanks and anti-tank guns. Then did this lack of sloping affect the Tiger's overall defensive capabilities? Despite not using sloped armor, the Tiger's thick frontal armor was still highly effective in deflecting or absorbing incoming shots, leading to the perception that sloping was unnecessary in this design. Yet, how did this design choice impact the tank's mobility? The heavy armor made the Tiger relatively slow and cumbersome, often limiting its operational range and mobility on the battlefield. So what challenges did the Allies face when attempting to counter this advanced armor? Allied forces had to develop new anti-tank weapons, including larger caliber guns and specialized ammunition, to penetrate the Tiger's formidable armor. However, how did the armor influence the psychology of both sides? The presence of the Tiger instilled fear in Allied forces, who often avoided direct confrontations, while the Germans relied on the tank's superiority to intimidate and dominate in battle. What suspension system did the Tiger tanks use? The Tiger tanks employed a torsion bar suspension system, which provided improved stability and mobility on rough terrains. But how did this affect the Tiger's ability to navigate the battlefield? The torsion bar system allowed the heavy Tiger tank to maintain better track contact even in difficult environments, enhancing its operational range. However, what made the system superior to alternatives at the time? Unlike other tanks that relied on volute spring suspensions, the Tiger's torsion bar system provided superior weight distribution and handling. Yet, how did the heavy weight of the Tiger impact its overall design? The weight required additional innovations like reinforced shock absorbers on the suspension to prevent damage during cross-country movement. So how did these shock absorbers influence the tank's performance? They helped maintain consistent suspension and functionality, even in rough terrain, allowing the Tiger to maintain speed and maneuverability. Then, how did this advanced suspension system compare to other tanks' battlefield performance? The Tiger's system provided an advantage in speed and mobility, allowing it to better absorb the impacts of uneven terrain and keep firing steadily. What role did optical systems play in the Tiger's combat effectiveness? The Tiger tanks were equipped with precision optics, such as the Turmzielfernrohr 9B sight, which offered improved targeting accuracy. But how did this optical advantage translate to battlefield success? It allowed gunners to engage targets from greater distances, often before their opponents could react, giving the Tiger a distinct edge in ranged combat. However, was this optic system unique to the Tiger? While advanced optics were present in other tanks, the Tiger's sights were among the best of their time, providing exceptional clarity and magnification. Yet, how did this affect the strategy and tactics employed by crews? The advanced sighting system allowed for greater tactical flexibility, as crews could engage and destroy enemy tanks with greater precision and from further away. So, what did this mean for the tank's survivability? The ability to strike first at longer ranges often meant fewer retaliatory hits from enemies, contributing to the Tiger's formidable reputation. In conclusion, the Tiger's advanced suspension and optical systems played a key role in its battlefield superiority, providing both mobility and precision, and setting a new standard for armored warfare design. How did the German military initially deploy Tiger tanks during World War II? How did the German military initially deploy Tiger tanks during World War II? The German military first deployed Tiger tanks in 1942, particularly in the Battle of Operation Torch in North Africa, aiming to provide a decisive edge over Allied forces. But what challenges did they face in these early deployments? The desert's harsh conditions, with its dust and extreme temperatures, caused frequent mechanical failures, limiting the tank's effectiveness and operational range. Yet, how did the German military respond to these mechanical setbacks? They established forward maintenance units and dedicated repair facilities to ensure that Tigers could be kept in operational condition despite the environmental challenges. However, did these solutions fully resolve the operational difficulties? Despite the maintenance efforts, the Tiger's mechanical issues remained a significant concern, and the tank's slow mobility continued to hinder their full potential in the field. Then how did the German military adapt their strategy in battles with more favorable terrain? In battles like Kursk, the Germans exploited the open, flat terrain, allowing the Tigers to maximize their long-range firepower and reduce the risk of close-range combat. But how did the Battle of Kursk specifically highlight the strengths of the Tiger tanks? The Tiger's heavy armor and high-velocity 88mm gun were key to breaking through Soviet defensive lines and providing decisive support for German infantry. Yet despite these strengths, how did the Germans adapt their tactics for urban environments like in the Battle of Normandy? Urban combat presented unique challenges, where narrow streets and dense buildings required Tigers to be employed cautiously, with infantry support to clear obstacles and protect the tank's flanks. So, how did the Allies adjust to the deployment of Tiger tanks in Normandy? Allied forces began using combined arms tactics, focusing on coordinated infantry and tank ambushes, along with airstrikes, to neutralize the heavily armored Tigers. But what was the psychological effect of encountering these imposing machines on both sides? The reputation of the Tiger tank alone often instilled fear in Allied troops, leading them to alter their tactics, while German crews took advantage of this psychological edge to dominate engagements. Then how did the Germans address the limited number of Tigers available? With relatively few Tigers in service, they were strategically deployed in high-priority battles, maximizing their impact in critical areas like defense or counteroffensive operations. However, despite their tactical advantage, what lessons did the German military learn from deploying Tiger tanks? The Germans learned that while the Tiger's firepower and armor were impressive, without proper logistical support and adequate coordination with other units, the tank's strengths could be undermined. And how did the Tiger's mechanical and fuel challenges impact its deployment? These issues necessitated extensive logistical support and maintenance, often limiting the number of Tigers available for combat at any given time. However, were there any design features intended to mitigate these challenges? The Tiger was equipped with a robust suspension system and reinforced components to handle its weight, but these measures were insufficient to fully address its mechanical and fuel-related problems. So how did the German military adapt to these limitations? They implemented specialized maintenance units and recovery vehicles to support the Tigers, but the persistent mechanical issues continued to strain resources. Yet despite these challenges, how did the Tiger tanks influence tank design? The Tiger's performance highlighted the importance of balancing firepower, armor, and mobility, influencing future tank development strategies. In conclusion, how did the Tiger's mechanical challenges affect its legacy? While the Tiger tank was formidable on the battlefield, its mechanical and logistical limitations ultimately constrained its effectiveness effectiveness and production numbers, leaving a complex legacy in armored warfare history. What were the initial Allied responses to the formidable Tiger tanks? The Allies quickly recognized the Tiger's superiority and began developing specialized anti-tank weapons, such as the British 17-pounder and the American 76mm gun to counter its heavy armor. However, how did these new weapons perform against the Tiger? Despite their increased firepower, these weapons often struggled to penetrate the Tiger's thick armor at standard combat ranges, necessitating tactical adjustments. Then, what tactical changes did the Allies implement to overcome this challenge? Allied forces adopted ambush tactics, utilizing terrain and coordinated attacks to target the Tiger's weaker spots, such as the rear and tracks. Yet, how effective were these ambush tactics in practice? While ambushes increased the likelihood of disabling or destroying Tigers, the success rate varied, and the risk to Allied crews remained high. So did the Allies develop any specialized vehicles to assist in combating the Tiger? Yes, the British introduced the Sherman Firefly, a modified M4 Sherman tank equipped with a 17-pounder gun, enhancing its anti-tank capabilities. However, were these specialized vehicles widely available? Due to limited production and resources, the number of specialized anti-tank vehicles was insufficient to equip all units, leading to reliance on standard tactics. Then how did the Allies address the psychological impact of facing the Tiger? The Allies conducted extensive training to boost morale and prepared crews to face the Tiger with confidence, emphasizing tactical proficiency over technological disparity. Yet, did these psychological strategies always succeed? Despite training, the presence of Tigers often instilled fear and hesitation among Allied troops, affecting combat effectiveness. So